If you've taken the FSOT once or you're preparing to take it for 2026, and you may be wondering what resources actually helped people pass the new FSOT, then this video is for you. No theories, no rumors, not outdated prep lists, just real resources used by real people who passed this very real October 2025 FSOT. Today, I'm going to break down what future diplomats who passed the FSOT, or you may hear me say FSOT, what they actually used, how they used those resources, and what new test takers and repeat test takers need to understand if they want to be competitive in 2026. This is not about studying everything. It's about studying what works. So let me just go ahead and preface by saying that I have something for you at the end of this video, and you're going to want it. So let me set the expectations clearly at the start. No one on the October panel passed because of one single book. No one passed. And so when I said the panel, just make sure I'm giving you clear direction here. Last year, right after October, we had 2 sessions in the Future Diplomat Society study group. And we had a session dedicated to, hey, what did you think about the October FSOT or the October FSOT? Then we had another session of the people who actually passed. What did you use and what worked? So when you hear me say that, that's what I mean. No one passed because of just one app, not even our app, not even the FSOT.com. Well, kinda. No one passed because they memorized trivia. Everyone who passed built the system. Different styles, different backgrounds, same logic. That's the through line of this video. This conversation came out of the FSOT success session that I just mentioned inside the Future Diplomat Society. These were candidates who passed the October FSOT. They shared honestly what helped without messing up their NDA, of course, and shared what they stopped doing and shared what they wish they knew earlier. What I'm talking about is essentially, I'm going to walk you through every single thing that they mentioned and how they organized it by how the FSOT actually tests you, not by the hype. So let's start with the U.S. history in general knowledge, because this is where many people either overstudy or they study the wrong way. Everyone who passed emphasized the same thing. They did not memorize dates endlessly. Sorry. They did not read encyclopedias cover to cover. They focused on milestones, institutions, and patterns. That's why resources like State Department's U.S. History Milestones page, and I'm going to put that link down below as well. That's why it came up repeatedly by multiple people. It's not about trivia. It's not about why events mattered. Books like Rise to Globalism were mentioned, not because they're exciting, but because they connect domestic history to foreign policy logic. High school level U.S. history and government textbooks came up again and again and again. And I think that's what really surprised people. But it makes sense. The FSOT tests foundational civic literacy, not graduate level theory. Crash Course and Khan Academy were used casually. They were not used intentionally to reinforce weak areas quickly, but they really did matter in this case. So definitely want to check out those, Crash Course and Khan Academy. The lesson here is important. Depth beats novelty. Clarity beats complexity. So let's move on to economics, current events, and foreign affairs. The sections that imitates the tough part of the test, more so the tough part of any test, no matter if you're taking the MCAT, the LSAT, or others. But this one intimidates people the most. Here's what stood out. Nobody tried to read everything. Instead, people followed a few consistent sources and tracked themes. Publications like The Economist, Foreign Affairs, and The Diplomat were mentioned because they explain systems, not just news. Podcasts came up a lot, and not just for entertainment, of course. They were used for repetition and pattern recognition. Listening to discussions on sanctions, trade, currency, and security over time builds intuition. That intuition shows up on test day. People also emphasize regularly tracking the current administration decisions, the trade policy, the sanctions, and currency movements, not memorizing headlines, understanding why decisions were made. That's distinction, and it matters. Now let's talk about logic and reasoning, because this is where many repeat test takers turn things around. Almost everyone who passed treated logic and reasoning as trainable, not mysterious. And that's the same thing that we did in the FSOT .com and also the Future Diplomat Society. We tackled it immediately. So the LSAT style resources came up repeatedly, not because the FSOT is the LSAT, it isn't, but because argument structure is universal. So daily logic practice mattered more than marathon sessions. How you study, it matters. People who passed practiced identifying assumptions, flaws, cause and effect errors, and logical fallacies. They didn't just aim for perfection, they aimed for consistency. That's the key shift. Now, let's talk about English expression and comprehension, because this is the section quietly eliminates people. You may be more familiar with the section that's called English expression. Now it's called English comprehension. So you may want to pay attention to those changes that the State Department announced on their site. Everyone who passed treated grammar as mechanical, not artistic. Older SAT and ACT prep books were mentioned repeatedly, especially for sentence structure and clarity, not style, not creativity, clarity. Resources like the elements of style and grammar reference sites came up because they reinforced rules, not opinions. One strategy that came up multiple times was journaling without spell check. And that is something that I personally do. It's really uncomfortable and it's incredibly effective. You can't fix what you don't notice. Now, let's talk about practice tests, because this is where the biggest difference shows up. People who pass did not just take practice tests, they reviewed them brutally. The most effective approach shared was take a practice test, review it blind, document every missed question, identify why it was missed, study that topic deeply, retest over and over. This builds up mistakes. This turns mistakes into a genuine roadmap. And if you're not tracking your mistakes, then you're guessing. So this is a good moment to pause and say something important. Right now, the official State Department practice test, and again, December 31st is the date, and it's been down for a few weeks, I think close to a month now. The official State Department's practice test has not been available, and it's been frustrating to a lot of people, including you, future diplomats. But it does not mean you have to stop practicing. This is why the FSOT.com exists, not just because other resources may go down, but because you need additional resources. And it gives candidates a working practice environment. It actually imitates the real environment of the FSOT. It gives you multiple test attempts and structured feedback, AI feedback that can tell you exactly how you need to approach the next step. While official resources are unavailable and limited, this one is available for you right now. You can go and create a free account. So if you are waiting for the perfect moment to start, you're already behind. Now let's talk about AI tools, because this came up more than people expected. Multiple candidates who passed used AI, not to cheat, not to create a shortcut, but to clarify. They used it to generate practice questions in weak areas, break down missed questions, explain economic and history concepts, practice logical fallacies, strengthen grammar, and prepare QEP materials. The key takeaway is this: AI didn't replace studying, it accelerated feedback. Used correctly, it helps you learn faster. Used lazily, it does nothing. Now, let's get into geography. Geography deserves its own moment. Everyone who passed agreed on this point. Do not memorize every capital. Instead, focus on regions, borders, choke points, and why geography creates conflict or cooperation. The FSOT or the FSOT test geographic reasoning, not map trivia. If you understand why geography matters, the answer often reveals itself. Now let's talk about community, because this is where many people underestimated the real advantage. Every single person who passed had some form of accountability. A study group, a WhatsApp group, a shared calendar, someone to sanity check their understanding. Studying alone is possible. It really is. But studying alone is harder. This is why the Future Diplomat Society study group exists, not to overwhelm you with content, but to keep you aligned. Let me say this directly to the people in the back and also the people who have failed the FSOT once, like myself. Failing once does not mean you're behind. It means you now have data. Most people who pass do not pass on the first attempt. Remember that. What changes is not intelligence, it's strategy. So if you just stop studying everything, you start studying the test reward. So I just want to make sure I said it again for clarity. What changes is not intelligence, it's strategy. You stop studying everything. Everything doesn't matter. Everything. Just stop studying everything. But you need to start studying on what the test rewards. Just want to land that plane there. So let me close with this. The people who passed the October 25 FSOT were not superhuman. They were consistent. They were intentional. They used aligned resources. They learned from mistakes. I want to also mention that I spoke to an ambassador, a U.S. ambassador. He retired, and he said he failed it. And now, obviously he became a U.S. ambassador. So there's people who have failed it 15 times, 11 times, and they're currently in their dream job. So just don't give up. So if you take the FSOT in 2026, like me, you do not need more resources. You need better alignment. So if you want access to aligned practice tests, structured study modules, and a serious study community, then join the FSOT.com and create a free account, and we'll see you inside of the free study group that we have. So also, if you want live discussions, resource sharing, and accountability, join us. Join the Future Diplomat Society study group. The link will be below. Follow here on YouTube for ongoing FSOT updates and breakdowns. We're not guessing anymore. We're learning from people who have passed. Thank you, Future Diplomats.